I'm sure we all have things that we worked on and was like, someday this is going to be a book, but it feels like, it's so long coming. Like I have people who were like, oh, I remember you talking about that like years ago.
Hey everybody, it's another You May Contribute-verse. I'm Josh Munkin alongside co-host Brenna Jennerette and podcast wizard John Seymour, and we are bringing you a sweet treat today in the form of a conversation with Judy Campbell-Smith. Last year, Judy saw the publication of Ice Cream Everywhere, which is just a real delightful treat. And we're not going to dangle it like one of those ice cream guys that just teases you before they eventually give you your ice cream. We're going to get right into it. But we're going to have to wait for Judy's next book, which is Baseball for Breakfast. Although we do talk about that one first in the lineup, so to speak. I'm going to stop the puns right there. Judy's also involved with organizing PB Power Hour, which is an awesome resource for the kidlit community and one that I do not get to partake in often enough because weekends with kids are quite busy. Do me a favor. Let's do one thing really quick before we get into the conversation, and that's manifest. Let's channel all of our energies into getting a minor league team to commit themselves to eating cereal. And you know what? Before I go any further, I'm just going to leave it at that because hopefully that tantalizes you into listening at least enough into the conversation to where that makes sense. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Judy Campbell-Smith.
I was like, Jeff, who's my husband, and he has 2 podcasts. So I was like, what do I do? So I think he figured it out. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, let's get my Jeff questions out of the way first. 2 podcasts,
okay.
Question mark.
Yeah.
What is he?
Yeah. So he has a podcast with his friend called Trekology, and they talk about Star Trek. But it's kind of like they talk about Star Trek and then use that as a launch pad to talk about like deeper themes in life and stuff like that. And then he has a solo podcast called Dodger Talk, and he recaps the seasons of Dodger baseball like year by year.
Wow.
So he's on like the mid 90s right now, recapping those seasons.
You had me at Star Trek and then you lost me at baseball.
I was not on board for Star Trek, and then I was very much interested in baseball.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that is funny because that's like him and me, where we're both like nerds, but then we like sports. So it was like, a good match.
Perfect. Well, it's smart that he's got 2 podcasts to split the difference there and gather all of the audience segments.
You clearly care enough about baseball to have put it on your website in the brief amount of research that I have done, staking your claim as a White Sox fan.
Yes. I mean, I love baseball my whole life. I've been a baseball fan. My next book that's coming out is about baseball. My husband watches every Dodger game, like literally every single one. And I don't necessarily watch every White Sox game, especially this season, because they are really terrible this year.
Well, let's talk about your book that's coming out, your baseball book. Tell us all about that. How did it start? Where was the inspiration? Because we know you love baseball, so.
Yeah. I mean, it started because we were watching a White Sox game a few years ago, and my husband asked me some question about their stadium. He's like, oh, what are those, pinwheel things? Where did those come from? Or are they old? Or are they new? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So I was looking it up, and they were put up by one of the former owners, Bill Veeck. And he is a super colorful character in baseball history. He owned a few different teams. He's just he's in baseball history, he's pretty well known because he kind of was the guy who introduced the idea of fun things into the game, in between innings and giveaways. But he also was very colorful where they're like, oh, we need to make a new rule because you're moving the outfield fences based on who's up to bat. So that probably shouldn't be allowed. And there was just one line in his bio about doing morning baseball games during World War II. And I was like, oh, what's that about? Because I'm very interested in history, and it just immediately to me was making all these connections of World War II, baseball, there's something there. And so once I started researching it, I was like, this is a book, I just know it. And so I just, started researching it and trying to figure out what the story would be. So I ended up making up a fictional family to experience this thing that he started where the night workers during World War II, the factory workers the Rosie the Riveters, couldn't come to baseball games because they were during the day and the afternoon, and they were sleeping or like they had a weird schedule. So he started doing games first thing in the morning, like at 9 a.m. And because he was Bill Veeck and loved the fun aspect of the fan experience, he served cereal and donuts, and he had all the like baseball staff, like the ushers, wearing like nightgowns, and it was just like very festive and strange. So I was like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. So I made up a family to kind of experience that, and in the book it'll be like the dad goes off to war, the mom starts working nights, and they're like, oh, we miss baseball. And then they get to experience this very unique way to enjoy baseball.
That's awesome, especially because I feel like it's a very similar sort of parallel vibe to like A League of Their Own, when they were like, oh, shoot, like we don't have any dudes to play baseball. I guess we've got to get the ladies to play baseball, right? And then that was like a whole sensation. But this is like a whole nother sort of like facet of this economy that is sort of trying to like fill these gaps, and then you end up with like, okay, well, we've made the games happen, but now we have nobody to watch, and it's like, oh, well, I know. So that's fascinating.
It's called Baseball for Breakfast. It is coming in 2020.
But look for it, I guess, if you're listening. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
It's with
Yes.
Charles Bridge. Did I read that right?
Yeah, Charles Bridge.
Yeah, it feels like a very Charles
Ross is
Bridgey
my
kind of
editor at
vibe.
Charles Bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun. And the illustrator, I love her style. It has like a little bit of retro look to it, but not too
cool.
old. She has a lot of energy in her illustrations. Her name is Maggie Carroll. And I think and she has lived in the Milwaukee, because it's the Milwaukee Brewers. So she's lived in that area.
I grew up in Wisconsin, so I have a soft spot for the Brewers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm hoping she brings in little details from just the local flavor and stuff. So
totally. Oh, that's
I'm
very
excited
cool.
to see it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations on that. It's such a rich vein of history's quirkiness that would never happen today, right? Like, there's no way we would be able to have a baseball game where you're serving cereal. There's too much industrial, sort of large-scale corporate organization of baseball for that to happen again. But it's fun to remember when that stuff like that was possible.
Yeah. Well, I think it seemed like it was so fun, and it was also like just the idea even of doing something fun besides just watching the game and eating a hot dog wasn't very popular yet. So it was kind of like, what's happening? So it would have been very strange. But I think in the minor leagues, you can still get that kind of vibe, because the minor leagues are still kind of like, please come watch us. Like, look what we're doing. Isn't this crazy?
We'll do whatever it takes to get you here.
Yeah, totally. My fantasy is that when the book comes out, I can hook up with some minor league teams and be like, hey, do a morning game. I'll promote my book. People will be like, this is crazy, and they'll come. So, yeah, so that's something I was like, I guess I need to start working on that earlier than later, just because obviously the schedules are set so far in advance. But that's kind of my hope, is like someday someone would be like, hey, let's do this thing and remember this very like niche, strange historical thing that really didn't exist for a long time. Because once the war ended, they were like, okay, never mind about that. Like, let's go back to normal scheduled games.
Yeah, right. And same with women's baseball. They were like, well, go back to your jobs. And they were like,
right?
But dude, like, this is what I do now. Like, this is like, what are you saying to me? So then there was like that brief, like, sort of gasp of like, we can do this, we'll go forward with the women's league, and then it kind of fizzled, and then, anyways, that's a whole different vein. But I'm very interested in your book coming out. I'm excited because I love all of that.
Can we?
Thank you. Just want to say, I'm sorry, Josh, I noticed, I can see on the screen, which listeners can't see, but you have an ice cream pin on, and I just love that and appreciate that.
It's embroidered. This is my ice cream t-shirt. I wore this for your other book, for us to talk about this.
Ooh, I didn't realize it was embroidered. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
It's, if I think to, I'll post a picture. It's rainbow soft serve. Before we talk about your ice cream book, though.
Nice.
Oh my God, I'm going to lose my train of thought. No, let's manifest this into being. By 2026, Max Muncy and Shohei Ohtani get traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, and they fly you out to get a picture with your book.
Awesome.
And they schedule a Brewers morning game that your family.
And Josh and I can both go because it's in the Midwest, and I would go back there anyways. And Josh is close.
Pop up to Milwaukee real quick. Yeah.
And we'll do a live podcast.
with Shohei Ohtani.
There's so much fun in there, but I cannot manifest Ohtani leaving the Dodgers like that. That would be
Right.
terrible.
Yeah, she's got to draw a line there, Josh. Come on.
It's a one-game trade. Maybe the Brewers are playing the
A
Dodgers.
one-game trade. Amazing.
Maybe the Dodgers will be in town when the Brewers decide to do their morning game. So we will all go out there together, and it'll be the Dodgers versus the Brewers at 9 a.m., and we'll just all have a bowl of cereal together, and it'll be great.
Who do we have to talk to? Karen Boss. Let's make this happen.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. She's like the
I
queen of
think
Charlesbridge.
a long list of people, so...
Right, there's a lot of moving parts here. Yeah, we'll need a lot of... okay, well, let's talk about cream.
I'll just call Ohtani.
Great. Put your daughter on. I bet that would win him over. Right?
Crying. You know what? By 2026, we'll be able to make whatever it is that we want to have happen with AI. Let's be honest.
Perfect. Great. Oh my God.
Shohei Ohtani eating cereal is the prompt of the day. Go on Photoshop and see what you can make happen. All right. Real podcasting decision.
Yeah, let's talk about Ice Cream is Everywhere, because that came out semi-recently. Like, you're kind of just on the tails of that publication.
Yeah, just a few months ago. So it still feels like it's like, oh, this is a new book, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So that book, that came out with Sleeping Bear in March 2024. And it just feels like so weird that it is, I'm sure we all have things that we worked on. And it was like, someday this is going to be a book, but it feels like, it's so long coming. Like, I have people who were like, oh, I remember you talking about that, like, years ago. And I was like, yeah, that actually happened. But I started writing that book in 2021. I had, like, a list of books, ideas that I wanted to work on in that year. And that was like, okay, this will be number one. And it took all year. I got no other of the things on my list done because there was just so much research. And I got really lost in the weeds of the research, trying to figure out, like, what is this? And it took way too long for me to figure out, like, oh, a picture book is 32 pages. I have to cut myself off. Like, I can't discuss every country of the world.
Right.
Because I just had so much information. It was like, yeah, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why are you doing all this research? Like, stop. So the whole year it took me to research and find the structure, like find what is this about, and not just like a bunch of facts about ice cream and like a list of countries. And so that's how I had to think about, I had a critique where they're like, find a connective thread beyond just like ice cream. And so that's where I came up with like the idea of the joy of ice cream, because there's like those books about everyone eats soup or everyone eats noodles or everyone eats rice. I think there's a few different ones. And I was like, okay, this is something everyone eats, but not because we are hungry. It's not like, oh, like, are you hungry? Here's some ice cream. Like, it's, it's just like, oh, this is fun. Want some ice cream? Like, it's a treat. So I figured that out and had some good feedback. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start querying it at the beginning of 2022. And I was really fortunate. I didn't have to query very long. So it was just
to get like, your agent, right? Just to clarify.
Yeah, to get my
querying.
agent.
Okay.
Yeah. So I queried that to agents and signed with Sherry Maurer. And then I was super lucky because it only was a few months of being on sub that Sleeping Bear picked it up and made an offer. So in some ways it was fast, but it also felt like, I had been like staring at the page of it for like a full year. And it was like, okay, like, yeah, that happened. So, and then obviously all the time between then and actually having it in your hands.
For sure.
It does feel like it's been a long time, like 2021 from when I started to 2024. But I guess that's not that long in the, in the publishing world, that's not necessarily like eons. But
it's relatively quick. Long. Yeah.
To be explicit, that is was that the lead manuscript that you queried Sherry with? With which you queried Sherry?
Yeah. So I kind of did things not the ideal way. I was going to queried one other manuscript, not to Sherry, but just really lightly before I started querying Ice Cream Everywhere. And it was a very niche manuscript, like it was like a Christian book. And so I only queried it a few places and it didn't go anywhere. And then I was like, okay, ice cream is the one I'm going to like really do the whole querying thing with. But I didn't have as many good manuscripts like in my back pocket But luckily, she really liked it, and she read my other things, and none of them are as strong as that. But she liked, I think, just my approach to my work, and I had a couple pitches that I had since written and gone on sub with. So I think she just kind of took a chance on me, because I didn't have like, oh, here's 5 other really strong manuscripts. But she was like, okay, I think this will work. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So, yeah. So she had a good instinct on that manuscript, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Ice Cream and Baseball are both nonfiction. Is that primarily what you're writing? Or do you also have, did your query like packet sort of look like a snapshot of like all like the different genres that you do, like fiction, nonfiction, whatever? I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, Ice Cream and Baseball are interesting because they're a mix of fiction and nonfiction. Like, they're not exactly
right. Yeah, sorry.
thing. And that's kind of, yeah, no, that's fine. It is confusing because I don't even know what to tell people. Like, so I have on my website an FAQ, like, is this fiction or nonfiction? And like, it's both.
Right. You're like, thank you.
Fiction-ish.
It's true. Yeah, it's informational fiction, which no one knows what that means, so I don't really use that term. But
yeah, that one's sort of a catch-all of like, yeah, okay, yeah.
And yeah, but when I queried her, I had another fiction manuscript in my back pocket that was very much more fantasy. But I told her I was working on a PB bio, because by that time I had started kind of researching for a PB bio. So I was like, I think nonfiction and fiction based on real facts is kind of my sweet spot, and it's like my favorite genre thing of book or movie even, where you're like, ooh, that sounds like an interesting story. I'm going to go on Wikipedia and read more about that, because I just saw a really interesting movie. But and I talked to her about like, because I had self-pubbed a picture book, and so we just kind of talked about all the different things I write, and I said I might have a few Christian manuscripts coming your way in the future, and so, she was kind of like, okay, like, we can work with all that and figure all that out. So she was just very open to going the road with me.
Which is, what you want.
Yeah, was your self-pub?
Exactly.
Was that your debut, and is that AJ's Neighborhood, which is your 3rd picture book that's out in the world, right?
Yeah. So that was my debut. Yes, AJ's Neighborhood, and that is fiction. But again, it's really based on fact, because it's like my son and our library and a walk around what was then our neighborhood. Everything in the book is pulled from like an encounter we had in our neighborhood or someone in our neighborhood. Yeah, so that was my debut. And when I did that came out of 2020, where it was like, I had always wanted to like write and publish a book. And it was kind of like, oh, I guess I'll do that, because literally I'm at home. I have like an infant. What else am I going to do? Like, there's nowhere to go. And I also have a like very young infant. So I guess I'll do this project. And initially I wasn't thinking of a career in writing. I just wanted to have a book. That was like the lifelong dream. Like, one day I'm going to write a book. But once I started working on it, I was kind of like, oh, this is fun. I think I can do this. Like, and if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. I didn't just want to like print it out and hand it out to my family and friends. And I also didn't want to just have it go up on Amazon and be like, okay, there it is. It exists. Like, it's done. I was like, no,
done.
Let's do this like as if I was like, let's pretend I'm a real writer. How would I do this? How would I do this if I was
amazing?
Professional?
That's a key. Yeah. That's a key step to overcome in becoming a writer, is pretending you are one.
Yeah, right.
I think it absolutely is. Like, because, I mean, you're just sitting in your room writing these little words, and it's like, is this a thing? Am I really doing anything? Like, it doesn't feel like, real.
Is anyone seeing this? Does this count? Is it like, yeah, totally. It's like,
yeah,
this fine line between like, what does it mean to be like a real writer? I don't know. Like, what is it? What are the parameters?
There's a very fine line for all of us, I think, between it being like a job and a hobby. And I think it could switch to being a hobby any day now, because they're just like, well, no one wants these books anymore. I'll just keep writing these in my room.
Yeah.
Is my existence as a writer fiction or nonfiction?
Yeah, right? Like, am I real? I don't know.
A little of both. Yeah. I just felt like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it like as if I'm really, like, this is really being published, whatever that means, like as if I'm a professional. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do a website, and I'm going to do a book launch, and I'm going to try and like go do events. And just in doing that, I was like, I think I could do this. I really like this, and I have more ideas. Like, I think I could do this. And so just kind of kept going with it, like trying to write the stories and get them out there. So, and querying was a big step because I was like, I could just keep self-publishing in theory, and that would be a career in writing. But I knew for the stories that I was wanting to do, the mix of fiction and nonfiction, I was like, I really want to have a little bit of support behind those, because those feel like they're other people's stories as well. Like, it's not just my story of my family. And I also wanted fact checking. I wanted someone to be like, hey, you said this. Is this true? Like, let's make sure, because I want to get things right when I am doing these, factual things. So I was like, well, let's try this other model and see if it works. And also I don't know. I don't want to say one is harder than the other, but self-publishing is really, really hard. And I was like, I would like to try this without having to be the person who picks the font and figures out what size paper to use, which is
totally
interesting, but just definitely like a whole lot of work that I don't necessarily want to be doing if I don't have to.
I mean, if you have a passion for all that minutia,
right?
Sure, go for it.
Right.
But there is so much expertise out there in the industry to take advantage of, as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, we're just kind of flying blind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just had to learn so much, and it was like, well, that was interesting, but if someone else can take that over, I would much rather just write.
Totally. Yeah, delegate all the stuff. Like, just let me write. Like, get the agent for the business part, get the editor for, like, the, like, over, like, the big picture stuff and the research checking or whatever. Get the art director for, like, all the, it's like, you guys do all that stuff. Like, I'm just going to write the stories and then, like, everybody else figure out.
Know my place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Hey everybody, we're going to take a quick break for some reviews, and we've got some goodies. I don't know. Bakery baked goods are goodies. Brenna's review for this week is for The Bakery Dragon by Devin, Elle, Kurtz. Ember, the cutest dragon you ever did see, is wildly ineffective at pillaging gold like the other dragons, but he's the perfect size for finding a glowing bakery in the middle of the night and endearing himself to the baker. He learns how to make the most delicious loaves of bread and a most remarkable friendship, which, as we all know, is the real gold. Paired with absolutely huggable illustrations, I dare you, Brenna dares you, not to like this one. Again, another new one for me. John's review for the week is for ELWOOD BIGFOOT Wanted Birdie Friends by Jill Esbaum and illustrated by Nate Wragg. It's a funny, feel-good tale about a big, loud, lovable guy just trying to make some feathered friends. Kids will giggle at Elwood's wild attempts to fit in, and along the way even learn a few new bird names, too. John gives this 5 Birdie Land tickets out of 5, and my review for the week is a pretty weird one, even for me, and I like pretty weird books. Cat Hats by Daniel Pinkwater is a book I came at kind of sideways. Pinkwater has been on my list for a long while after we talked about his 1974 middle grade book, Lizard Music, with our friend Gerald Connors a long while back. This picture book, Cat Hats, featuring a feline protagonist with the most amazing name. Get ready for it. His name is Thermal Herman 6 7/8, and Daniel Pinkwater makes you say it so many times as you read this book out loud, and it's amazing every time you say it. Thermal Herman 6 7/8 is much more recent, this book is, having come out in 2022, but is no less trippy and bizarre. It's encouraging to us authors as a reminder to seek out and embrace the weird, because if you lean into it hard enough and in the right ways, it really can work. Does Cat Hats have a message? I'm not sure, but Thermal Herman 6 7/8 does come to the rescue when he's brave and saves a frozen witch by fashioning himself into the shape of a pointy hat. I'm still waiting for resolution of the plot line around Johnny the motorcycle guy who crashes into a tree, though. As usual, if you would like to support this podcast, please do so by hitting up our Linktree at linktree.com/verseshow. Following us on Bluesky, preferably, is our social destination of choice these days. Not so much me, because I've kind of abandoned social media at the moment. But follow us on Bluesky and go to our Linktree, linktree.com/verseshow or verse.show for all the rest of our episodes and conversations. Please do give us a review if you care about this podcast and our continued mental well-being. Go out there and do some good and write some stories. And now back to our conversation with Judy.
I was going to ask Judy, so this is like a perfect segue. So when you were just going to pretend that you were a real writer and do all that stuff, and you were like, well, I got to like have the platform, build the website, like all the stuff. Is that how you got into PB Power Hour as well? Like how was that born? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, so PB Power Hour, thank you for asking about that, because I just love PB Power Hour.
I mean, shout out to PB Power Hour. It's amazing. Like I love what you guys do. I was so honored to be a part of it. Like everybody listening, go check out PB Power Hour. We'll link it in the show notes. It's a great event every month.
Yeah. And we loved having you on. It was so fun to have you on that time we had you.
Thank you.
But that came about because when I was working on AJ's Neighborhood, I asked around to a few different people I knew about, like, how do you do books kind of thing, like just trying to figure it out. And one of my friends, I think, is somewhat acquainted with Christine Evans, who's a wonderful writer. She writes the Wish book series. She wrote Dear Mr. G, which is a really lovely book that came out last year. And so they were like, oh, email her and ask her like how to do this. So I did, and she was very lovely, but she was like, you should probably join SCBWI. Like, I was like, okay, what's that?
Like, ooh, sounds fun, right?
It's for people who aren't pretending anymore.
Yeah, right. You're real now. You've arrived.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll join that. And through that, I met Jamie Rodarte, because in my chapter, in the SoCal chapter, she was a part of that. And I also met Christine Rivera-Crack. And so we met through like the picture book critique group for SCBWI, and kind of, you can find your people, and we're like, oh yeah, we get along and we like each other's like critique voice and stuff. And then one day Jamie emailed us, and also Abby Mumford, who Jamie met through 12 by 12. So she's on the East Coast, and the rest of us are here in Southern California. And she's like, I have this idea. Do you want to do it? And in general, I try to have a yes attitude when offered new experiences, because, why not? So I'm like, sure, I will. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't really get it, but yeah, let's do that. So she kind of explained it. She like had us come on, and she did like a run through of what she pictured it would be. And I was like, oh, okay, like I get this. This could be cool. And so we just started doing it. And Jamie was like hugely the force behind it, the idea, and just the administrative power behind it. But we just, started doing these 1-hour Zooms once a month, and we do different writing exercises. Like we take turns hosting, we come up with these exercises, and we just, for picture book writers of any experience level, any genre. And it's been really great, because I think we've all grown through the process of like leading and coming up with exercises, but we hope we're really helping people. It seems like we are putting good info out there for people to learn more, because it really just spans the gamut of like, sometimes we're talking about writing, revising, or brainstorming, or even some querying stuff, just like all different things. And a really nice community has kind of come out of it. So we're in a transition point right now, because Jamie is stepping back for like 2 years, just really carrying a lot of the administrative weight and being like the information hub for that. So
it's a lot.
She's gonna step back. It's a lot. But Tunisia Williams is stepping up to kind of take that role, and then the rest of us
amazing.
Who are still there.
Also, like she's
amazing.
She led the PB Power Hour that I was a part of. I just want to shout her out really quickly. She's incredible, and in my opinion, has one of the best laughs I've ever heard in my life. It's so like all consuming and like joyful. It's amazing. Yeah. So, anyways, if you're listening, Tanisha, hello. We're big fans. Yeah, so anyway, so that's amazing.
It's such a good resource, we think, for the writing community, and it's free. And for me, being someone who has relied on the free resources out there to figure out this whole thing, so important. Like, I definitely wouldn't be here if there weren't like so many free resources that people have put online or made available through various means. So I just was like, oh, it'd be a shame if this free resource ended, especially as all these other things in the writing community have ended, like all the pitching contests on Twitter, and just lots of things are struggling right now to reach folks. It's been great, and it's been great just to even be a part of that team and get to know everybody.
I just want to say real quick too, before we get away from PB Power Hour, I love that you guys have these prompts for like like brainstorming, revising, like starting a new draft, whatever, because so often as a writer, you do all of that on your own. And it's so isolating and so just sort of like, you're just going blind. And like a lot of times that's fine, but you guys have made a sort of community out of it, like a shared experience, which I feel like, especially as a new writer, if you're coming into this, it can feel so daunting. So being a part of PB Power Hour and just knowing like, can like get together with other people and like not be by myself and like maybe bounce some ideas off of people or just like, be a part of like the bigger picture. I feel like that vibe and that energy just like can really help to motivate and sort of like keep you afloat. So yeah, I'm so glad that you guys are keeping it going.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to ask this directed question as a podcaster, and maybe your podcasting husband has asked you the same thing. And I'm going to suppose that the answer is because there's so much value in the live experience, but is there intentionality behind not recording it?
Yeah, we've talked about that because people have asked like, oh, I missed it. I'd love a recording or whatever. I think it's partly because, one, we feel like if it's going to be recorded, like this is for free, so it feels like then we're creating a product and we could give that away, but there's again, adding more administrative,
that's for sure.
Yeah, holding on to these files and those videos and sharing them. We just kind of felt like, it feels like the live experience is where it's at, and that would be a different thing because we do have times where people share and we just try to keep it like to be an experience that we're having together. So we've gone back and forth about like, should we record it? Like, should we give out our slides? But that's just didn't feel like that aligned with what we were doing. And then also I think somewhat it was like, okay, like we're making all this stuff and sometimes we quote people and we're like, we go whatever's on their website or whatever. And it feels like, right. Okay, now we're bringing in like other people's stuff. So we feel like if you attend and you get that information, great, then you can go and seek them out directly. But to create these files with all this information, it just felt like that's becoming another thing.
Yeah, and I guess my reflection is like we can do this, we can have this conversation, and it's recorded by intentionality with the understanding that if we reference certain things or do talk about quotes or talk about books or whatever we say, we've got control over it. We've got the express, obviously the consent of you for being on the show. It's for a different purpose, but I appreciate so much like we've been talking about, the live nature of it, the communal aspect, despite my weekends not being forgiving enough to, be ever able to attend. But it is so important to me, particularly, have the free things that you can take advantage of. Our conversations, the live experiences, the things that are low barrier to entry to help people upskill themselves into what is so much more complicated to enter than anybody really gives it credit for. So good on you guys.
I will say, too, about recording versus not recording, because I've, we've all been a part of webinars or Q&A stuff or whatever, and there's often, either it is recorded or it's not recorded, or there's, most of it's recorded and then they don't record the Q&A, and I think especially, if you're just starting out, or even if you're not just starting out and you've got questions that you don't feel comfortable having recorded, it gives you sort of that, freedom to just be like, look, to me, maybe this is an embarrassing question, or maybe it's a question about money that you don't know how it's going to be received, or maybe it's a question about a specific agent that this person worked with, but maybe they don't want to tell you honestly how they feel while it's being recorded, but maybe off the record they'll be more candid. So I feel like there's that sort of piece of it also, which just it sort of takes the pressure off to actually have a more open conversation about this insane industry that we are all a part of, because there's stuff that goes on that you're just is that real? Is that actually happening? But if you record it and then put it out there, it's, there could be backlash, or that, it could look badly on your career or whatever. I do appreciate, that sometimes stuff isn't recorded and people can talk freely. So,
but for me as a podcaster, it does not compute. Every conversation I have needs to be recorded for posterity. Right, not because it's important, but because I forget.
And I'm sure Jamie could explain that better than I did about our reasoning behind that, because I know we've talked about it on and off at different times when people have brought it up. But I also think it would be generally a weird recording, because a lot of the time is silence, because we're saying, okay, everyone,
right.
take 5 minutes and work on, do this exercise. And then it's just silent and the person on camera is just kind of like, sitting there. So it's kind of like, I don't really, I guess someone could get value out of that, but it's not the same as a webinar. It's not the same as, it's a kind of different thing. That's a combo of different things. So to sit and watch a recording of my face while you write is like, why do you need to see me while you do do that? It's just awkward.
Yeah.
Give yourself credit for your face being very inspiring, Judy. I did take, what was the social media, I'm blanking on the name of it, the social media network that flourished for a minute that was audio only. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was all live audio spaces, and that sort of thing has its place, but linking that to this part of the conversation, because there were, and Gerald Connors has done this. We love shoehorning in ways to talk about Gerald.
We love it.
Where you get in the same space. This is not recorded, it's all live, but you get in the same space and you just sit. You sit and you write with each other. And you know that there's another person on the other end. Again, that's in favor of doing it live and connecting live with people as a way to sort of stay accountable and be productive. But anyway, I will remember the name of that social media network as soon as we hang up. It was something with a G or I don't know what.
We'll message you, Judy.
Great. I'll be waiting for that info.
Right.
But I don't think it exists anymore, so it's kind of moot, especially, whenever this comes out. Okay, so I want to ask about your background. 40 minutes into the recording. And I want to see, because I'm always interested in this, I want to see if your background in film and storytelling, you feel like that comes out in your writing and has an influence on how you approach your projects.
I hope so, because I paid a lot for that education. But
let's say yes.
Yes, it does, for sure. I went to college because I wanted to be a movie director at one point a million years ago. And then once I got to college and started taking film classes, I was like, I don't like the business. I don't get the business. And I was probably younger. I was younger, but less confident. So I was just like, this seems very intimidating. I don't want to be in the business. But I still loved film and storytelling. And I always say that if I hadn't studied film, I would have just studied literature, because it's the same things that I love about it, is the stories and storytelling. So when I switched from filmmaking to film analyzing, essentially, my undergrad degree and my grad degree are both in media studies. And for my master's degree, I basically wrote my thesis about Hollywood musicals and the musical genre. And so I love movies. I love the history of movies. History keeps popping up because I love history, and I love analyzing films. And I just love, I love figuring out how these stories work, how a movie works and why it does work or doesn't work. So I think that does come into my writing, because I'll write something and then it's does this work? Why is this not working? How can I make it work? Which is what I do anyway. We were watching the Star Wars movies with our kids. We were watching the prequel trilogy. And after it ended, I was like, so Jeff, to my husband, I'm like, here's what they should have done, because this is not working for me. I just rewrote the story for him. And I was like, here's how Anakin's turn to Darth Vader should have happened. Because right now, there's just not as much motivation. It doesn't make sense, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The timing is off in these movies. It should have happened in this point in the story. And he's like, okay, good for you. But I feel
I'm sure Hollywood would love to hear from you. Yes.
Right. I just need to go on the fan fiction boards and get it out of my system. But yeah. So I think that does come in, because it is all storytelling. Yeah. It's very similar the way you can analyze a book as you can analyze a film. There's obviously a different medium, so there's the visual element, but the storytelling, character development, all of that is the same.
Say too, for better or for worse, any book I read now is I read it, I try to turn off, the critique brain, the critical side, but I'm forever just being oh, you could cut that word, why did we need this? Okay, I'm gonna put a pin in this, why did we introduce this character 3/4 of the way in? And then, it'll reveal later, I'm oh, okay, I'll remember that for when I'm trying to do, X, Y, and Z, but oh, that didn't work, or why did they have, why did she have such an attitude? I would have downplayed this and I would have added that, and it's you just, I agree with you though, it's so similar. Watching movies with my kid, he's just like I was as a kid, so this is very karmic, but he will watch the same movie over and over and over and over, and I just am okay, all right, I'm here for that, but my mind is wandering, and so eventually I'll watch it with a sort of critique brain, and it will help, you know, unlock like a new story or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's a great first line. Like, what else could you do with that? Or, you know, whatever it is. So in that regard, it has been helpful to keep my brain occupied.
Do you feel, Judy, with your I don't know why I'm framing the question like this. Okay, so
I feel like I'm in therapy. That sounded like
I know.
Like, oh boy,
how
here
does that
comes.
make you feel? How do your film studies make you feel? No, okay, so here's my version of what you're talking about, Brenna, is like I can't... Obviously, I feel things when I watch Pixar movies, but they make Pixar movies to make adults cry. Like, that's the basic point of making those Pixar movies. But they don't emotionally resonate with me in the same way, because I find myself doing that thing that you're talking about, which is try and look at the first 10 minutes of Up, for example, and look at it in terms of the beats and how they extract that emotion from you. Do you feel like you've been to the Sausage Factory too much? Or do you still emotionally resonate with stuff? Is it just my problem?
Are you just
make this my therapy?
I think for me, if there's certain books, if there's certain stories or books that will resonate, and so then I can enjoy it on both levels. Like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm into this story, I'm sucked in, I'm just turning pages. But then I can also be like, oh, I can see like... because I mostly write picture books. I'm hoping to write a novel this year, which I've said every year of my whole life. But, like, you know, that's...
It's going to be this
year,
because it's been recorded.
Yeah, I know, now I have to do it. But I do want to start transitioning and writing some other age levels. And so I've been studying novels a bit more and read Save the Cat. So now when I read some novels, I'm like, oh, yes, this is the all is lost moment. Like,
right, yeah.
But that hasn't really ever, for me, ruined the pleasure of enjoying a thing, of analyzing it, which is why I could do that in college. Like, I love watching a movie, and then if it's a really good movie, reading all about the behind the scenes and finding out, like, oh, did you know this person was almost cast? Like, I don't know why, I just enjoy both of it. So if it's a good book, then I can still get into it and just be sucked into the story and the humor or whatever. Also be like, okay, I see what they did here. Like, they planted that seed, and now it's, you know, we're seeing this thread. Like, so for me, I enjoy both of that, and hopefully that will help when I have to actually write a whole novel.
Yeah, I'm always amazed actually because I've written a couple of novels, and you know, the first couple of pages of the first chapter or whatever is always like the hardest, right? It's the most revised because you're trying to get so much into that first little bit to unravel, you know, the rest of the story, while also trying to like hook the reader, make it exciting, not have it be like an information dump. It's like such an art form in those first couple of pages. Not that the rest of the novel doesn't matter, but like the setup is like so important. And so I feel like that's what I really focus on now. And I'm like, oh, wow, like that was so seamless. Like they introduced like the four main characters. I know who they are. I know what their quirks are. Like I know where their story is going. Or like they'll use like a very casual interaction to sort of like drop in this information, but you don't feel like it's just like a list of stuff. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, like make it. I get what you're saying, because I feel like it's both. It's like if it's really captivating, you're like, oh, amazing. And then you can also be like, wait, why is it so captivating? Like, what did it just do here? You know, and you can sort of pick it apart. Yeah. Anyway, but so Judy, I am so excited that you are doing the Dead Manuscript Society with us. So if you are ready and you have it up, I would love to.
Okay. So it's interesting because I don't normally have manuscripts that I think are dead. Like a lot of them, I'm like, okay, I want to get back to that when I figure out how to fix it, or when I'm like more excited about it again.
Mm-hmm.
Or like maybe some editor someday will specifically want this thing. I mean, I feel that.
Yeah, usually it's like, okay, I wrote it and I just feel like something's missing, but I don't know what, so I'll just put it aside. And this one, I know there's like 4 big things wrong with it, and it would be a major rewrite. So it would not be the same story at all if I came back to this one. So I'm like, this version is totally dead. So I'll read some of it. I can't read all of it.
Editors, you know, if you like what you hear, there's a version of this that could be yours. If you want it.
Yeah, so
I mean,
get in touch with Judy.
Sure. My agent hasn't even seen this because I don't send her things unless I feel pretty good about them. So I was like, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. But okay, I'll read some of this. I won't read it all because it's cringy to hear some of the rhymes.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. But this is called The City Keeps Cool. Let me go. The sun rises, a city stirs. The forecast, extreme temperatures. In uptown condos, the AC blows, but downtown, we open windows. A line of cars heads out of town, families looking to cool down. We plan to stay in the city and support our community. Neighbors and strangers on every street help each other beat the heat. Okay, so then it just goes through and they kind of are like going through the city and seeing how everyone is like experiencing the heat wave and surviving it essentially. And then all of a sudden at the end, there's like a climate rally. And then this kid like gives a speech. So
awesome.
I won't read that because it's horribly didactic. So that's a little bit of the rhyme. But I just know I'm not a rhymer naturally. I can tell when it's like, I'm like, okay, I've done as good as I can on this rhyme, but it's not good. Like, it's not clever. The meter's off. So that's not good. Like, I just know this would never be like, oh, yeah, like, great rhyme. Like, it's just kind of like, it kind of rhymes. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then the other problem with this manuscript is something that often happens to me with first drafts is that there's no main character. I often start with like an idea of like, oh, I want to write about this thing, this event, this, something. And then I just kind of write it, but there's like no character. Like it's just an invisible first person narrator, but really they have no agency or personality or like there's nothing about them. They're just like faceless. And then I get through the manuscript and I'm like, okay, so this isn't going to work because there's no main character. Like
who are they going to connect with? Right.
Yeah, it's just like the illustrator has to make the whole character because I've given them nothing. Like there's nothing there.
Interesting.
So that happens to me a lot because I am usually inspired by something real. So I'm like, oh, I want to write about, this baseball game. So then I have to like figure out like, who's experiencing this? Like, why do we care kind of thing? And it's
like
a
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say, when you were reading it, I was like, oh yeah, like, like air conditioning specifically. I'm like, right, like, almost everybody uses it. And now with climate change and all the stuff, like it's, more and more like being relied on more and more. But my husband told me recently, like the invention of air conditioning really changed a lot of like the American landscape in terms of like where people lived because they could live in, hotter places like Arizona and Texas and whatever. And so it really changed a lot of that and like the infrastructure and where buildings went up and cities were put. And anyway, so that's where my brain went. So if you end up redoing that manuscript and you want a little piece of air conditioning history, that might be part of it. I don't know. But yeah, I've never seen a book like that.
Hey, Jean, if you're listening to this episode, this doesn't mean go and prattle off more facts to your wife, because generally speaking, if it's anything like my marriage, you gotta know when to stop your fixations.
Right. Gene loves a good fact. He does. Yeah, he does not listen to the podcast, though. He did sign up for the newsletter, though, which does send out the podcast. So anyways, yeah.
Well, I think for me, the big problem with this, other than the rhyme, because I don't think it needs to be in rhyme, I'm not a rhymer, is that this is not the story I was wanting to write. Like, I had an idea about something I wanted to write about, and then this is what came out. And I wanted to write a story about the concept of a cooling center, which I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're popping up more and more because things get so hot and people who are houseless or people who don't have air conditioning or for various reasons, you go to these places and you just get to cool down. It's an air-conditioned place. Sometimes it's a community center or a library or sometimes a train station, like whatever. They just have places you can go to cool down. And I was like, that's very interesting. But then I never really got to it. Like it's one line tucked in there about like, oh, and then we went to the cooling center. And then it just moves on to this climate rally. I get through the whole story. I'm like, why is all this other stuff here? Like, I don't get it. Like, this is not what I wanted to write. So to me, that's why if I went back to it, I would be scrapping almost everything. And I'd have to come up with a character who goes to the cooling center. And it's about that. But there's all this other stuff in there that I'm like, okay, this is not the book I wanted to write. This just came out for some reason.
Right.
I don't know. I was just trying to get a story on the page.
Yeah, something to work with.
So here's a thing that I'll contrast with something that I've written and revised recently, and I'm just horrendous about refusing to change focus of things that I write when I revise them. But I had a concept manuscript that was sort of similar to this, based on some, really, really basic stuff. And when I went and revised
it?
cut the podcast, we're done here. No. When I went and revised it, I mean, it had the same problem. There were no characters, and I needed to create a narrative. The narrative emerged through notes. This is not anything that I wanted to state explicitly in the story, and I'm connecting that specifically to the, how the city keeps cool concept, where there's a version of this, I suppose, where you can keep some of the same framing, but the illustrations through instruction or the illustrators tell the story in a way that contrasts with the words on the page. So, I mean, I'm curious if that's something that you explore too.
I don't know. I generally try not to use a lot of art notes. So for me, I feel like the like general background would be there if I rewrote it, but I feel like it would just be different because you'd have a character. There'd be some kid. I kind of have an idea of like how I would do it if I did it, and maybe someday I will do it, but I don't know. But it'd be some kid, and they're like, oh, we have to go to the cooling center. Our house is too hot. And they would kind of maybe reflect on these things as they're going, or say, well, why doesn't so-and-so come to the cooling center? So it's generally there, but I don't know. I tend not to give a lot of art notes. Just because, one, I'm not a very visual thinker when I'm thinking up my stories. Like, I don't have a lot in my head about what's there. So I feel like, someone else can figure that out. Like, they'll come up with that. And that has worked so far.
Yeah.
For the books that I've done. Where it's like, I'll stay in my lane. I don't know. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah. I think though, if it is a concept book, I think more art notes sometimes is helpful, or maybe not more, but maybe like what you're saying, like sort of an explicit one at the top that's just like, this is my thought, take it wherever you want, but like, I sort of see like this journey between, whatever, and, you could sort of work in whatever you want based on like what I've written, just to give some direction, but
action notes.
Yeah, I mean,
the clarification notes. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Thank you, Tara Lazar. Yeah, action notes. Yeah. Yeah.
I have one more question because we're coming up on the hour. Before Brenna goes into, well, it was really nice to have you. What else do you have to promote? Which is always the Brenna closer.
Oh, you can see my tell.
One more, yeah, exactly. One more web to pull apart a little bit, because we've talked about this a couple of different ways. Your intentional balancing of fiction and nonfiction, and do you call that info fiction? Has that gotten you into trouble? Has there been any lack of clarity around how to categorize or market your books because of this balance between story and information transmission?
I would say in the editing process, not that it's been trouble, but there, especially with baseball, we did get into kind of trying to find that line of like, how much are we leaning into fact? How much are we leaning into fiction? And which parts do we want to be factual and fictional? I don't know if those are both words, but I'm in one of the versions of baseball, I had like the family that experiences it is fictional, but I also had other characters who were fictional, like I was like, oh, this baseball player's coming up to bat. And then in the editing, Karen was like, why don't we just use the real baseball players' names? Because this is a real event that happened, and it's not affected by the fictional family watching it. And so we went and we basically tried to put as much fact into the story as possible about the event. And so we'll see how that plays out when it's actually like a book. But I think, yeah, it's a delicate balance. And I don't think in marketing there has been any issues, but I think it has been a challenge when I've been pitching these things where it's like, is this, like, how do I pitch this? And when I was looking for agents, like I wanted agents who were open to nonfiction, but it's like, this isn't strictly nonfiction. Like I've made up all these characters, but they're experiencing real things. And so for me, it's like, I try to make sure that the actual stuff is really factual and then just be clear about what is made up. So it's a delicate balance. And I know for ice cream, in the illustration part, like there were a couple notes. I try not to give too many notes to the illustrator about this or that, but I would give notes where I'm like, okay, so this actually should be, like, people in this country would probably not be wearing shorts. Like the girls would be wearing dresses or something like that to just keep the facts up front. But I attended a webinar with Carol Boston Weatherford a while back, and she writes a lot of this kind of stuff where it's fictionalized true stories or like, poetic tellings of real things. And someone asked her about that, like, are your books, where do they get shelved in the store or the library, like fiction or nonfiction? And I just took what she said because she's like, if anyone's asking you where to put this book, say both. Buy 2 copies and put one in the
Heck, yes.
Amazing
section.
Or you say they're never shelved because they're checked out too often or something.
Right.
Amazing. Those are both great.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah, just
I will say that
display.
Yeah, right. I will say too that Betsy Bird has talked about this, and I've heard her say, and some other people too, who are like, as the writer, because Betsy also writes, and she's like, that as the writer, you don't really have to concern yourself with where it's shelved. Although I understand that you're saying it in a bigger, context of like, what are you telling people? Because it's like, well, you do have to know like what you wrote about and like where you, like what genre it is. But I hear what you're saying too about like, especially if you're querying an agent with a story that is sort of a mix, and they're like, oh, I'm open to nonfiction, and you're like, okay, great, but like nonfiction with like, something I made up to carry the narrative, that's still cool, because it's like you don't want to sort of like mislead the the query or the agent or whatever, and have them be like, this is a nonfiction, this author doesn't know what they're talking about, so I understand like that struggle. So anyways,
yeah, it can be confusing, I think, to explain to people, and I want kids to understand like what parts of the story are real, that they could go and like, oh yeah, go find this ice cream tree, it's real, it exists, but like these people I made up, or whatever it is that is made up. So it's tricky. I mean, right now, the story I'm working on right now it's a nonfiction story of a real event, but I'm telling it through the first person narrative of an inanimate object that is like the focus of the event. So it's like, is this fact or fiction? I'm like, hopefully it's accurate, but I'm obviously personifying like this inanimate object, so it's not nonfiction, but it's a mix. So
I think doing straight nonfiction, yeah, right. Doing straight nonfiction is like really hard, because you really have to like, like steer it back. Like, oh, that was too much. Like, oh, I took a liberty. Oh, like they maybe didn't say that exactly. So you have to like, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to sort of like walk that line.
Well, and I think ultimately it's a gradient, right? Because I'm thinking of like a recent contrast. I've read this in the last couple of nights with my youngest daughter, Jessica Stremmer's Lights Out, about that movement. I mean, obviously, you cannot say that there was one particular sparrow that was lost and injured, and you don't have that sort of internalized story. That sounds similar to personifying this inanimate object, but it is a framing device for something that is more inherently factual. And so, yeah, I guess the point is leave it up to the professionals to figure out what shelf to put it in. Yeah. Like, we're just writing the good stories to loop it back around to what role did we take on as authors. And I guess the other reflection I have is kids live in stories, and I don't really think they just want a good story. I don't really think that they care or will be too discerning about whether or not something is rooted in truth or fiction. It just needs to be fun and keep their attention.
Yeah, right. Well, on my website, I say like my author brand or whatever is sparking curiosity, because that's, to me, like that's where I live. Is like, again, I love hearing something, but like, whoa, what's the story behind that? Like, I just heard this little tidbit of something, or there was a movie about this thing, and I'm like, so what part was real? And so that's my hope, is like readers will read and be like, wow, that was really interesting. I want to go find out more. And then they get more facts, but they've just been given enough information that they're like, well, that was interesting. I want to learn more about that. Let me go pursue more information. But hopefully they have enough that they feel like they did learn something. So if I hit that balance right, then you'll have hopefully kids reading the books and being like, okay, that was really cool and interesting, but there's more I want to know about whatever part of the story.
Now I'm going to go look up a YouTube video of the guy in Turkey that flips the ice cream cones around and frustrates people.
Okay, you definitely should, because it's so amazing. It's really, really cool. It is really cool what they can do, and it's very fun. Like,
I loved that you included that. Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. Well, Judy, thank you so much for coming on, and special shout out for your perseverance at the beginning of the hour with the tech. I appreciate you trying so hard to make it all work, because this has been such a joy of an interview, and I'm so glad that we finally got to chat with you about your writing journey and PB Power Hour and all of this amazing stuff that you've got coming.
Well, thank you. It was really fun to talk to you guys.